What is up, everyone? And today I am... Oh, great, it's you again. What's wrong with this image? Seriously. Stay for a walk, eh? No, stay for a walk. Wash day tomorrow. Nothing clean to wear. Nothing clean. You just said my muscles are short of a six-pack. I need your clothes, your boots, and your camera. You forgot to say please. I'll be back. Well, that was a lot easier than I remembered. But anyway, today I'm finally going to review a movie that is very, very successful and very popular. It was released in 1984, and it's known as the... Okay, fine, I surrender. You win, you win!
Bad to the bone, bad to the bone, bad. Bad to the bone. I broke 1,000 hearts.
Hi, Corey here, and today I'm reviewing The Terminator. The Terminator was released in 19... Sorry, I need to applicate Corey's voice codes.
Testing. Okay, that's a lot better. And you know what? I think I might cut the glasses for the sake of the review. The Terminator was released in 1984 and it was directed by James Cameron and stars Arnold Schwarzenegger and Linda Hamilton. The film follows a woman named Sarah Connor, and she's in her young phase where she sort of has a part-time job, and she's sort of in that phase where she's trying to figure out what she's going to do with the rest of her life. However, one particular night she finds out that there is a psycho going around the city and is killing every single person named Sarah Connor. And so she realizes that it's not long until she's next. To add to her stress, later on that same night she realizes that someone might be following her. It is soon revealed that a T-800 Terminator was sent from the future to 1984 to kill Sarah Connor. And there was a warrior named Kyle Reese who comes back in time to around the same point in time to protect her. And so it is sort of like a chase where Kyle and Sarah need to survive and not get terminated by the Terminator. The Terminator, as you guys know, exploded in popularity, and it is one of my favourite film series of all time. I've gushed many times that I love the Mission Impossible movies, but I also love Terminator. I'm a huge Terminator fan. I have the entire set on DVD. I've got the first one, the second one, the third one, Salvation, and yes, even Genesis. For those who don't know what I'm doing, I love Terminator, and I sort of want to give you my full thoughts on the whole series, and so I'm having a Terminator marathon, and I'm going to review every single Terminator movie, including updated thoughts on Terminator Genesis. Now, I think one of the reasons why the Terminator movies are so successful, not the reason, but one of the reasons, is just simply because for an action movie, the premise is awesome! I can't put my finger on it, but the idea of cyborgs taking over the world and the idea of these Terminator cyborgs and machines, just the premise, it just is such a cool idea to me. And why is the Terminator so iconic? Because the Terminator is regarded as one of the best in the series. Not the best, but it's definitely considered one of them. And I think the Terminator did a couple of things to make it as popular as it is. And I'm not just talking about the premise, although the premise is awesome. The Terminator had a very, very low budget, and it kind of shows, but in a way it kind of works. The original Terminator had a very, very low budget because getting the script greenlit for the film was very hard for James Cameron. he wrote the script and no one really trusted James Cameron to direct it, and he had a rule that he would only sell the script to someone who would let him direct the film. And when he finally found someone, they were going to let him direct it, but underneath a very certain budget. So he had some very severe limitations to making the original Terminator movie. However, I think it kind of works, because there's a lot of aspects of the Terminator that I just can't get from any of the sequels, and that includes Judgment Day. The film mainly takes place at the night, and due to the low budget, everything just feels more grim, dark, and down to earth. I love the tone, I just love everything about the film, because this is a dark, grim, unsettling thriller. There's a lot of different genre aspects in the film, a bit more on that later, but I think out of all genres, I think the Terminator is really regarded as a thriller. That was a terrible joke. And I think one of the many aspects that makes the film so grim is the amazing score. Now, I will say that all the sequels do have that really awesome butt-kicking dun-dun-dun-dun-dun in the background, but one thing I really do like about the original film is that it's a lot more quiet. It's not as over the top as any of the sequels are, but it's more quiet and suspenseful, and that beat really more represents a heartbeat of a machine. And I feel like it's a very unsettling kind of music, but it's fantastic. I love the score for this movie. I'm not just talking about the main theme as well, as far as loving the score. I love the overall soundtrack, which is pretty rare for me, because there's a lot of really memorable tracks, like the music that plays out throughout most of the beginning. It's quiet, it's only got some very simple beats, and like it's a very simple soundtrack, but it fits the rest of the film, like it fits the cinematography and everything, and it adds to the grim and the darkness and the overall grittiness of the film. The music was really hard to do underneath such a low budget, small and repetitive, however I really don't mind because it really adds to the experience. And it really makes me kind of glad that the Terminator was made underneath such a low budget, because I feel like there's a lot of great aspects that I appreciate about the original Terminator that I don't get from any of the sequels, like I said earlier. One of my favourite scenes in the entire movie is the entire opening sequence with Kyle arriving in 1984, and the whole chase scene of him trying to avoid the police, and like he's running through the alleyways and finding clothes to wear, or the sequence where Kyle first rescues Sarah and they're trying to get away from the Terminator. I think those scenes are the highlights of the overall film, as well as the soundtrack. That is where I remember the sound the most, and I think it's incredible. And the thing I love about the movie is that it feels like the stakes are constantly increasing, like the stakes are slowly getting higher. Like the film gradually gets more and more and more intense as the film goes on. I love the night sequences in the film. James Cameron was really passionate about the film overall taking place at night, and I think it works in the movie's favour. I can see why. It really adds to the atmosphere of the overall movie, and again, even though it's a low budget film, I think that having the film take place at night as well as the score, and having it a suspenseful thriller, all of this stuff really does add to the film. And Arnold is perfect for the role. I mean, seriously, there's a lot of people, myself included, who say that you can't have a Terminator movie without Arnold in it. Like, if you're going to have a Terminator movie, Arnold has to be in it, and I agree. Because Arnold the T-800 is the only character we see in all 5 Terminator films. Yeah, he played a very, very small role in Terminator Salvation, but he did make at least a cameo in Salvation, so Salvation still counts. James Cameron was also very anxious about the way he moves, like how he needs to try and manipulate his body to move in a way that looks unnatural, in a way, looks animatronic, to help sell the fact that he's a machine. And all that are through very subtle moves, but I really love that kind of filmmaking, that kind of attention. I also love seeing how this T-800 operates. I love seeing how systematic it is to hunt down Sarah Connor. This movie also has a good, strong female protagonist that is vulnerable and has a character arc. At first she's scared, she's vulnerable, and she's terrified actually. And she is very incapable, like she relies on Kyle to help her at first. Or is trying to get away from Kyle, one of the two. But throughout the film she's slowly progressing, she's learning tricks, like she's learning from Kyle. And by the end of the movie she takes what she has learned from Kyle and ends up using that to save him. And I like how she gradually gets stronger throughout the film. However, those little tidbits are subtle, like she takes little baby steps, but she eventually gets there. At first, Kyle is the one doing all the work and just flat out trying to protect Sarah. However, throughout the film, she starts to gain more confidence, and soon she's working with Kyle and they're working together to survive, instead of just Kyle doing all the work. Speaking of Kyle, Michael Biehn, I hope I'm saying that right, because he was magnificent in this film. I think that he nailed everything about it. The sound of his voice, his physical appearance, his personality, the delivery of his lines, his physical acting, everything about this guy I love. Whenever I'm looking at Kyle Reese in this film, I don't see Michael Biehn playing as Kyle Reese. I see Kyle Reese. I also think the relationship between Kyle and Sarah Connor really worked together, mainly probably for the reason that I already mentioned earlier. And I love the cinematography of the film. The action really holds up really well, and the nighttime sequences are really dark, self-contained, really grim in a way, which is perfectly accompanied by the amazing score and the just everything about these little areas. Like, I just love the cinematography of the film. And a lot of the effects hold up really well. Like the chase towards the end when Kyle is throwing all these bomb-like devices they made earlier at the Terminator, and they're sort of chasing each other down the street while Arnold's on a bike and they are in a vehicle. The overall action really holds up. And in my opinion, the only effects that look slightly dated is the scene with the eye and the scene where we see the whole fully endoskeleton of the T-800 after Arnold's flesh was burned off. Even though I still think those effects look really dated, I don't mind because I can see that they are practical effects. They look like animatronics, and yet I can see there's a lot of filmmaking effort going into that. I had to give it credit because it was the 80s, and I love how there was a whole mechanism, like they managed to make this whole animatronic Arnold head with a mechanism of a LED red light that sort of represents the eye, and it's covered by a perfectly really good replica of Arnold's face. Like, I love the filmmaking aspect of that scene. I used to think that the endoskeleton scene at the end of the film, the climax, was really dated and really funny, because when I first saw this movie, I thought the climax was funny. Because it was a T-800 and it was using stop motion to walk, and I thought it looked really dated and really bad. However, one thing I really do now respect about it is because there was a lot of effort gone into that. They used an actual proper machine to walk, and it must have been a nuisance to create. But one thing I love is that they actually had two halves of the T-800, a top half and a bottom half. And so they tried to only get the whole thing sparingly, because usually you only see either the top half or the bottom half, and so when they're having shots of like the upper half of the head turning or the head walking like this, or the legs are climbing up the stairs or something like that, it doesn't look like stop motion. It looks like a fluid machine, and it looks a lot better, and I feel like that it can be very frightening in sometimes. The bits that aren't using stop motion look really good. And that's one thing I love about this film. There is a lot of filmmaking involved. The T-800 Terminator makeup on Arnold's eye towards the end of the film is fantastic. It looks amazing. I love the scene where Arnold manages to fix his eye. A lot of people think that scene is disgusting, but I think it looks great because there's a lot of filmmaking involved in that scene. There's also some very iconic lines like, "I'll be back." This movie's not just a great romance, it's not just a great action, it's not just a great thriller, it's not just a great sci-fi, it's just a great film. It's just a great film in general, and if you haven't seen this movie yet, I highly recommend it. It is a fantastic movie. Almost as good as Judgment Day. I love this movie. I watched it again for the sake of the review, and it's even better than I remembered. It's a great movie. I am proud to have the first Terminator on DVD. And if you already have it, I hope I got you excited to watch it again. And if you haven't seen it, I strongly recommend it because it is a phenomenal movie. Guys, please, go see the Terminator if you haven't seen it already because it's a great movie. Stay tuned for my review for Terminator 2 Judgment Day. I can't wait to talk about that one. But until then, hasta la vista, baby.